of faith is disturbing.
Believe it.
What's going on, Geeks? You're listening to a special episode of the Geeks Under Grace podcast. My name's Cody Armour, and I am here with Scott Miner.
How you doing, Cody?
I'm doing great. Scott is the co-owner and CEO of Realm Makers, and now Realm Makers Expo, happening July 18th through the 20th in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Realm Makers, tell us a little bit about Realm Makers.
Well, it's really a bunch of creatives who are the ones when they go to church, everybody wags their finger in their faces. How can you call yourself a Christian? Right? You know, they make video games and
right.
they're making books, fantasy, science fiction. The whole inception of Realm Makers was authors, Christian authors who are writing fantasy and science fiction, but they're going to the regular writers' conferences, the Christian writers' conferences, where everybody else is writing Amish, romance, historical, things like that. And a lot of the classes just weren't useful. All the agents and editors are like, no fantasy, no science fiction, no speculative. So it's really not terribly useful or purposeful. You could learn to write better, but you couldn't really commune with people who were just as geeky as you were. So everybody found themselves by their Captain America t-shirts and ended up sitting at the same table. And eventually my wife was like, we need our own conference. So my wife is the author. I'm the author's husband who just got really involved as things started to grow and grow and grow. And now I'm CEO and she's president and founder of Realm Makers. And we've gone from just the writers' conference to the conference and a retreat, a winter retreat. We started a Realm Makers bookstore. So we have a mobile bookstore where we'll sell the books by the authors who win our book award, the Realm Award, at homeschool conventions. And we've gotten to the point where we sold $40,000 worth of books at 2 weekend events, homeschool conventions in May. So that's become very successful in terms of sales. And we've got a physical bookstore in the King of Prussia Mall. So any listeners in the Philadelphia area, the only bookstore in the third largest mall in the United States has a conspicuously large number of Christian fantasy and science fiction. Well, I have to amend that statement. It's Christian authors who are writing fantasy and science fiction because the books they're writing aren't distinctly Christian. You know, it could be superhero romance or Amish vampires in space, or just fantasy with dragons. Very cool. Right? But now we're evolving into the expo here in our 13th year because we just keep growing out of our previous
very
locations.
Exciting.
And we are going to have representatives from, of course, our community, fantasy and science fiction. The Christian Game Developers Conference is holding their annual convention in the same BAT venue, same BAT weekend as we are. So they're all going to be there. So video games, board games, card games, comics, voiceover, audio drama. We've got live audio drama, like sketch comedy audio drama performing. It's the Main Street Music Show. We'll be there with guest stars Mike Naraki, a.k.a. Larry the Cucumber, and Katie Lee, who is the voice of Connie Kendall in Adventures in Odyssey. She's been doing voiceover work for decades. She's the voice of Baby Rolf and the Muppet Babies and Sunny Gummy and the Gummy Bears and several of the My Little Ponies. She was the original Sheila the Thief in the, she was Sheila the Thief in the original D&D cartoon. So that I found that one
very
out
cool.
Recently. I was like, whoa, that was when I was a kid.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So usually when we do these kind of interviews, I always want to start out with asking, what do you geek out about? And what are you geeking out about right now?
Well, I have a degree in musical theater. So, but I haven't geeked out about that in a long time because I've gotten into everything that our authors are writing and reading. I met my wife playing Dungeons and Dragons. So if I want to go do something, that's kind of it. But have we done it in forever? No, we have not. We go to, there's a local company that's actually expanded a lot called Dungeons and Drafts, right? So you could just go to the Phoenixville Brew Pub, and play D&D for 4 hours. I
That's
don't
cool.
know what a one shot is. When I was a kid, it took us 8 hours just to roll up characters. But
Right.
now you can just pick up a automated character. Automated character? That didn't make any sense. Somebody automatically made these characters. They just print them out, and you can just pick them up off the table, and
Right.
I'll play the
There you go. You start
barbarian,
playing
right?
right
And you
away.
just start playing right away. So that's a lot of fun. So I geek out about dice. I sell a lot of dice at our bookstore, and we have the most gorgeous dice. And you just can't get enough of dice. I don't know what it is, these shiny math rocks, but it's fun to be
I
able to
too am a
sell
dice
them.
goblin. Totally understand.
Yeah. So I don't play much, but I still get the nicest, the gemstone or the glass dice. I've got the hollow metal dice that when you shake them, they kind of like ring, like those things that you might put in your hands and just
Oh,
roll
cool.
them around, and they kind of jingle,
Yeah.
make a little hypnotic sound. So yeah, that, and I can geek out over a pretty smartly well-made spreadsheet, honestly, when it really is when it communicates the right thing. Love a good
Very
story,
cool.
but I'm really overwhelmed with work preparing for the expo. It being a first time that we're doing it,
Hmm.
end up digging into all sorts of new platforms, learning new things. AI advertising and click testing and letting AI sort of run your ads while you put in all your actual assets. So
Hmm.
that's really a lot of things that are work really are kind of interesting to dig into these days.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned educational background, and you've answered this a little bit already, but I was curious. You've been a performing arts teacher.
Yes.
You've directed plays and acted in plays. How has for what was the switch from that to running a bookstore and Realm Makers?
Well, I suppose it just has to do with um, converting from, like, as a creative person, I never gave myself credit for being an artist until I was in my mid 40s. Like I have a degree in musical theater and acting, singing, but I didn't actually consider myself an artist. And now I don't know why,
Hmm.
but when I finally admitted to myself that I was an artist and I needed to be creating things or I wasn't happy, whether it was a spreadsheet or whether it was a role in musical theater or whether it's a really fantastic event, like planning the Realm Makers conference totally feeds that same creative impulse in myself. So I don't miss not directing children's theater. I miss Shakespeare. I neglected to say I geek out about Shakespeare. Boy, oh boy. But I do Shakespeare with children, like performing, like staging all kids
That's awesome.
in a Shakespeare production where they actually say all the actual Shakespeare's words. We don't change the words. We just cut it down for time's sake. But so I don't miss it. I'm still creating, but I'm creating something that is feeding the creative community that we work within. The bookstore, I've never wanted to have a bookstore, but I love learning something in order to be a book sales expert in our community to fill that gap of all the authors that we know and the editors and the agents. We only had former booksellers who were all saying, don't open a bookstore, you know? And I figure if somebody's going to tell me I can't do something, that's all the more reason to do it. Right. So it is incredibly
Yeah.
difficult. And our bookstore, I don't know too many bookstores that'll say, yeah, we're successful. We sell enough that I can take an income, but it serves other purposes, right? It makes Realm Makers so much more valuable to the community because we don't just
Mhm.
bring them together and introduce them to agents and editors, sign their contracts. We actually help them sell their books. And without that piece, I just felt like a lot of it was just entirely vanity. If we're all writing novels and we're not selling books, what is the point? Are we just
Yeah.
feeding ourselves? Is it just so that we can
Hmm.
create a thing, or are we doing it for something to create a story that speaks into somebody else? Whether it speaks into their life, whether it gives them a little joy, whether it teaches them a little truth, right? Within the context of this fictional story, or sometimes it's therapeutic for yourself, and that's the one you could write and just put it in the filing cabinet, right? Not everything has to be published, but nowadays that's so easy. Everything ends up getting published, doesn't
Right.
it? Even some things that shouldn't. So the
Yeah.
educational side of things, I love directing theater, conducting chorus, nurturing the students that I taught for 10 years in music and drama. But I don't feel a whole lot of difference in what I'm doing right now because I'm still serving the artistic community.
Very cool. Well, something that Geeks Under Grace believes, it's kind of the cornerstone of who we are, is the importance of story. And I look at your story, and it seems that you also see the value in story. Jesus uh, taught through story.
Absolutely.
What do you, uh, what would you say is the reason that story is important?
Well, I mean, right now, I am completely wrapped up in refining my own story, right? I feel like
Mhm.
God is writing a story in Realm Makers and Becky and I. And in order to be able to serve in the capacity that we are, we had to spend a good 5 years understanding our own story. And it's so interesting how many years you can go in your life and never grasp the need to find your own story, to refine your own story, or even just to go and say yes and pursue the next chapter in your story. So right now, it's the story of following God's leading in what we're doing, this expo and everything. You're doing God's will when the thing that you're doing is not something that you really thought of. None of us really thought we were ever going to be doing what we're doing. I never would have thought I'd be opening a bookstore, but the opportunity presents
Right.
itself and you say yes and you accept that adventure, right? And I've just been saying yes to the next adventure for the last 5 years. I made a deliberate decision to all right, I've planted enough seeds. I'm going to start just saying yes, right? So that's the story I'm wrapped up in right now. And it's God's story. And I don't see over the
Mhm.
horizon. I don't know where this is going. I'm like the author, God's the author, and he's writing my story, and he's a pantser, you know, by the sense that you're writing by the seat of your pants, but get a bunch of authors together and they go, are you a pantser or are you a plotter? Right? Well, maybe with some people, God is a plotter, but in my life, he knows I can take it, I guess. We're pantsing my story.
That's actually one of my questions was going to be, where do you see Realm Makers in like 10, 15 years?
Wow. Well, from the last 13 years, what I see in 10 years isn't so much what I'm going to be doing or what Realm Makers is doing, but I see the community becoming leaders in the greater popular culture of
Mm.
whether it's fantasy and science fiction or just creative um, industry in film, television, animation, voiceover, board games. What I'm discovering is true is that there are Christians at the top of the industries already. They just somehow
Mhm.
feel outnumbered and have to keep their head down because when they go to church, they can't talk about their creative pursuits. And when they go to their creative jobs, they can't talk about their faith. So they're just kind of
Mhm.
bifurcating themselves and can't bring themselves together. And that's what Realm Makers helps people to do, to bring their
Yeah.
faith, to bring their creativity, talk about how Jesus has impacted their life, and then play D&D till 2 a.m. and then come back and then geek out with your
I have,
friends where it's like, and then King Kong punched Godzilla in the face. Oh, it was fantastic. Oh, it was so wonderful.
I've definitely thought about the fact that a lot of these Christian creators, they couldn't really speak about it in the office. I've never thought about the fact that for a lot of them, they probably feel a little weird talking about it in the church. Some of it, I don't want to say anyone's names, but there are some big video game companies that have some Christian creators in there that some people in the church may be like, "You're doing what? What's that?"
Yeah.
And not fully understand that culture.
Well, Magnus Lehman,
That is
Alex
incredibly
Magnus
interesting.
Lehman, he's going to be at Realm Makers Expo. He's the head of creative
Mhm.
at Riot Games for MMO
Yeah,
R&D. He's one of the creators of League
wonderful
of
dude.
Legends. Fantastic guy. He leads a Bible study there at Riot Games.
Extremely tall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But so I'm looking forward to meeting him in person. But we've been talking a few times, and I'm really glad that he's going to be there. A lot of other video
Mhm.
game creators. And right now, the timing for Realm Makers, when it comes to video games, there's an author right now, S.D. Smith. He just wrapped up a Kickstarter where he's launching a book that ties you right into a video game, right? So you can play the video game, and the goal
Oh,
is
cool.
it's 3 to 5 hours of gameplay. That's it. Leads you right into the game, or right into the book, as opposed to like this
Okay.
never-ending kind of game. But
Mhm.
even the Christian industry is beginning to maybe to understand a little bit more about video games are something more than just your kid's going to get addicted to it. I know one
Mhm.
developer who, like 10 years ago, they were talking to Christian investors and Christian professionals, and as soon as he would say he's a game developer, they'd say, "Oh, video games, huh? My 22-year-old is addicted to video games. You're the problem," right? And over the pandemic, people discovered, who didn't have any problem maintaining their community? Video game,
Yeah,
gamers.
it's true.
No hiccup to their community at all. And that spoke something into some people in the Christian church. But when I think about it, video games were very much a different part of my life. My video game life was when, I'm talking 1980s, Space Invaders and Pitfall and Donkey Kong and all that stuff. Like, I haven't played a whole lot of video games since then, except the ones I play with my boys, like Lego Batman or whatever. And they run around and I have no idea. I just follow them around. But when I look nowadays, it's like, my goodness, and the young men who are just told that they're useless and you know not contributing to society and just all sorts of negative voices. It's like, no wonder they might dig themselves into a video game where they can be a hero, where
Mhm.
they can become an expert, right? Where they can be someone that they can't be in their real life because they've got nowhere but their bedroom to spend their time. You know,
Mhm.
so how can we understand them better and give them a better story? It's right. It's like the kid who's addicted to video games, like, needs their own better story, right? But if
Mhm.
in the lack of that, you can only play somebody else's, and it's just a matter of what you glom onto.
Right.
Film, whether you play games, whether you read books, everyone's got the way they like to digest story. And
And like you're saying, where are they going to find that outside of that video game if the church is not engaging them where they're at?
right,
Because they're not walking into the church right now. They're playing the video game at home. And so maybe if you create a video game community or even a Christian video
absolutely.
game, um, meeting them where they're at is where they're going to find that message.
Yeah. Instead of saying,
I
"Oh,
totally
everything that
agree.
you love, you shouldn't be doing that." Well, why not?
Right.
Well, because they look at it and they go, "Well, it's violent," or whatever, and the Christian church has been doing
Yeah.
that ever since I was a kid, or before I was a kid, listening to songs. It's like, "Oh, that Huey Lewis song, I want a new drug." What? You didn't even listen to the song, did you? Right? It's about love,
Right.
you useless reptile. Like, listen to the lyrics.
But we're having a tailgate party at church next Sunday for the next football
Oh,
game,
don't even get me started. Yeah, it's like the pastor can come up and cosplay if he's wearing football jersey or a baseball hat,
Right.
right? But, heaven forbid they go outside of either sports or politics, right? Like, that's totally
Mhm.
acceptable fandom. but somehow they just don't understand any other fandom. It's difficult. And then when you're basically telling other parents, like, you shouldn't be writing fantasy and science fiction. You got to be channeling spirits to be doing things like that. And I literally heard that from somebody at a homeschool convention, pointing at my wife's poster because she writes Dragon Rider fantasy, so this big silver dragon on the cover. But then I know another author, they're on a panel discussion at a con. She's a Christian. They're talking about science fiction, and somebody says, Christians have no business writing science fiction. I mean, you're science deniers. Which is ridiculous. It's like, no, we just know who made the rules, okay?
Right.
But it's really amazing. It's a difficult place to live as a Christian creative person. Even if you've got a supportive pastor who's not a creative themselves, I mean, there was one point we're sitting down and we're talking with our pastor, and they're like, how can we help the creative members of our congregation? I mean, I love arts and crafts.
Right.
It's like the creative impulse is nothing more than
well-
using glitter glue on your little preschool piece of paper,
Mhm.
It doesn't
Yeah.
translate into an adult life. And most people just gets beat out of you. My wife and I have discovered, like, oh, okay, well, now after 50, we're learning, well, actually, I'm autistic. Oh, really? If you are, I guess I am, whether it comes to all these things that you can be labeled to understand yourself better. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
We just had to try, to keep a job, try to stay married, try to keep a relationship, even though you have these obstacles that just don't have a name, And I don't know if it's better or worse to be like, oh, well, I have this, and now everybody else has to understand that about me, and I don't, because I have this.
Right. Hyper definition has gotten
Right. I have this definition
very
of
interesting.
me, right?
Like I'm with you. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's helpful in some cases, and sometimes kind of a curse to hyper define every little thing.
Exactly. But that's another part of our story, and it's really helped our relationship to be able to understand, well, that's where that comes from. You're not
Yeah, for
just
sure.
ignoring something. You are whatever's true about that. I don't know everything about, well, somebody who's autistic and this is how, I just go through life intuitively.
Neurodivergent as well. So
Yeah.
I understand.
I just totally just intuit life entirely, and when I trust that, when I'm listening to God and God's people and the circumstances, it is really life-giving to be able to continue saying yes and seeing success and seeing failure that doesn't stop you, right, but propels you forward. It's really invigorating, and it's a real joy to be in the middle of my story, even though it's at a time when you feel like you're at the end of a story because my youngest is graduating high school. It's going to be going to college, then you're quote unquote empty nesters. There's another label for you. But we've got our careers nailed down. We'll just do more events.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you brought up failures. I was actually going to ask you, what was one of the biggest challenges in making Realm Makers a reality for you?
Well, Realm Makers was a reality before I got involved. But the failure that's driven our growth, and I would say the pain that has driven our growth, is just trying to solve the next obstacle, right? Because you can let that failure or that pain make you stop and recoil, like, ow, that hurts, I'm going to pull back and I'm going to stop. I'm not going to go forward anymore because that hurt or because that was difficult. And we keep pressing through that failure. We keep pressing through the pain. And by pain, I mean, oh, we don't have enough space in the exhibit hall. Oh, we don't have enough room in our classrooms for our classes, right? We didn't, you can only plan ahead so far when you're planning an event. You don't know how many people are going to show up. And there's always some degree of pain on both sides of failure, right? There's pain that we didn't have enough people, or there's pain when you have too many people, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
it can feel like failure when you feel the pain, but you just can't treat it that way. So when it comes to failure, like with the Realm Makers bookstore, our first event was a huge failure. It was a whole lot of fun. We went to Salt Lake Comic Con with the Realm Makers bookstore,
Okay.
and I took way too many books, and we hardly sold anything. And we hardly had money for gas on the way home. We felt like, stupid teenagers driving from Salt Lake back to Pennsylvania looking for change to buy gas. I don't know how. I still to this day don't remember how we got home. I just remember we didn't have enough money, but we still got home. Praise God. But
Yeah.
doing that first event and then doing the next one anyways, and doing the next one anyways. And it took
Hmm.
till 2022 before we actually broke through and sold like a whole lot of books that it was exciting. So that was a good 5 years of pressing through and doing it because you felt like this needed to be done. And other people said, yes, this is useful. This is purposeful, even though it wasn't really making enough money. It still
So
doesn't make enough
perseverance was
money, but it
key.
sells a ton of books, and that's valuable to our community, right?
Hmm.
So there's something at the end of the next horizon that's going to make what we're doing more fruitful, more profitable, even if it's not financially profitable. It's spiritually profitable, it's professionally profitable, it's profitable for our community. And so all the different things that we do all have the same focus. And I think that is helping each of them to kind of know their place, whether it is the Writers Conference or the retreat or the awards program or the bookstore, now the expo. I can only imagine the kind of collaboration that's going to happen from having every different creative medium
Hmm.
in the same expo, and everyone is a Christian, right? If
Yeah.
if you get a bunch of Christians in the same place who are as creative as these people are, they're the best people on the planet. Like the people that I serve are the most authentic, generous, creative people, and more than anything else, I think that's one of the things that really prompts our growth, because anybody who comes into this orbit gets swept up in it, right? And the closer we all get to
Hmm.
Jesus, we're all going to get closer together, because he can't help but do that, right? So if you're getting
Hmm.
off track, Christians can get off track, but if we're in community and getting closer to Jesus, we're going to get closer together. And the one who's off track is maybe going to have a little bit further to go, but it's really an amazing experience.
That's awesome. I feel like I'm going to put you a bit on the spot
All
here.
right, I'll get ready.
Off the top of your head, do you know someone you can share a story about who specifically may have been impacted by Realm Makers?
Oh my
I say
goodness.
specifically, not specifically by name,
Yeah,
but
not
just
by name, but
someone that you can think
one
of.
of the things that really made me step back from, we know what we do when we are planning an event. You plan a party, people come together,
Mhm.
they go home. We plan this writers conference, people come together, they go home, everybody had fun. Great. I'll mention 2 examples, and they were pretty much in the same year. A pastor who was an author also came up to me specifically to tell me, I go to 5 conventions every year, and they're designed to feed me as a pastor. Nothing, no event I've gone to has fed me as deeply as this Realm
Oh,
Makers
wow.
Writers Conference. And from my standpoint, I'm just doing the venue search, we're signing contracts and writing checks to the faculty. It's very kind of operational. But
Mhm.
and we don't until this 13th conference, we've never done like worship in the morning. We're very much like, Realm Makers is not a church. We are the church, right? We're the body of Christ,
Right.
but we're not a church, and we're not going to treat it like that. We're not going to act like that. But when the body of Christ comes together, it is nourishing. And to be able to serve that pastor's creative heart was what he needed more than anything else, it seems. And in that same year, it was after that same conference on social media, someone who's just sharing with us, it's like, no, guys, you don't understand. You saved my life. Literally. I was going, just making comments that, they were going to commit suicide. And somebody had them come to Realm Makers, and the people that they met, the conversations that they had made that change. It's nothing that,
And that's what it's all about.
I mean, yeah,
That's
but it's
yeah.
to be able to step back and go, okay, this work that I'm doing is something that God is using in the moment when everything's happening. While I'm freaking out about the airport transportation isn't working right now, and my cell phone is blowing up with texts, right? And I'm dealing with the operational aspect of, the microphone's not working in the breakout room, or, those things that make the event work
Right.
and make it work for me, make it feel like work. There's an outcome of bringing the people together that is something that is far beyond the intended outcome. The intended outcome is, okay, we pay agents and editors and fly them in so they can take appointments. You pay and fly yourself in to sit in front of them and pitch your manuscript. And the intended outcome is that people get published. But in the meantime, as the people are together, we're having, Nerf wars, late into the evening. Everybody's bringing their Nerf guns, or they're playing D&D, or, marriages have come of Realm Makers. At the conference, we always say, keep your hands off. Keep your hands off each other. At the conference, this is not that kind of conference, guys. But, people meet each other. And there's got to be at least six weddings that have come directly out of people who met at Realm Makers. And there's one couple that had their honeymoon, like they got married, and for their honeymoon, they came to Realm Makers. That was in 2023,
Wow.
2022. It was the year we were in Atlantic City, so it was 2022. And for transportation from the Philadelphia airport to Atlantic City, we had like 20 limo transfers. So I was like, you guys don't worry about transportation. We've got a shuttle, right? So, but it was a limo. So we gave them a little limo.
No, that's
shuttle.
awesome.
So that was kind of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I just can't get enough of the people.
So lots of great stories then.
So many great stories. I can just kind of keep going. But those two were the first ones that have stuck with me, because it drove me to take what we're doing more seriously, right? To take myself and my role more seriously. Because when you just start something and your wife starts something and you get involved, you get to the point where like, well, so what do we call ourselves? Who are we? Are we an executive director, a founder, co-owner? And eventually I'm like, I've got to play the role of CEO. Let me go to other conferences, meet other CEOs, see what that looks like. And really, I've just been going out for the last 3 or 4 years, developing relationships, right? And that's how we've come to the point where we're doing the expo. Honestly, from going to homeschool conventions and seeing all these people who are really fans, but the people who run the homeschool convention are very much like this, very serious. This is Christian, this is math, this is science, this is curriculum. But then you got little Jimmy walking by with his Harry Potter scarf, and the dad's got a, let the force, let the, may the Lord be with you, but it looks like Star Wars. Right. There's all this fandom walking around you, and we've got the fantasy and the sci-fi books, and everybody's like, whoa. You've got the kids who come to all the events because their parents are vendors. And I remember the 12-year-old boy looking at our books going like, these books look cool. Like, I've never seen these before. You go to some of the other vendors and the books are like, Jenny's new
Mhm.
buttons, and I didn't make that up. That's actually like, just 300-year-old books for kids, but
Right.
the fandom is there at these homeschool conventions, and we really felt it when we had Larry the Cucumber join us for the last 5 years, because he's got his book series called The Dead Sea Squirrels,
Okay.
right? Which is basically how,
That's
as
great.
as one of the co-creators of VeggieTales, they couldn't tell New Testament stories. So with the Dead Sea Squirrels, he can now use this concept to tell, fun stories, but utilizing the New Testament stories involved in it. And so then I'd go to
But all
NRB.
these amazing stories are. Oh, go
Well, I was
ahead.
going to say, I'd go from the homeschool conventions to like NRB, right? National Religious Broadcasters, which is another, button down, very professional, you know, there's Eric Metaxas going by, and, the Nick Vujicic and all these big names, Dr. Ben Carson, and it's great, but they're all fans of these people, but like, don't let the fans in. The one year I was there, they did live stream of The Chosen in a ballroom, and they invited fans just to that live stream, but they had to go like single file line around the exhibit hall, right through The Chosen. They've got these artifacts in the pre-function space with like Simon's knife and Matthew's spoon right next to each other, their own little weapons.
Wow.
Jesus' tent, people taking selfies in Jesus' tent, from the season with the Sermon on the Mount. And you
Yeah.
got the RV for the Reagan biopic there in the exhibit hall. And then you go back to the homeschool convention the next year, and you've got the RV with the Pilgrim's Progress full wrap, that
Okay.
Revelation Media put together. And I'm just like, there's something here. There's all this stuff that Christians are fans of, that there's something not happening. Like a fan con, like the
Right.
rest of the world goes to fan cons. There's like 5 in every city every weekend. But Christians don't seem to get that. Or they do, and they just go to the secular fan cons. But
Mhm.
the Christian creators, I want to be able to love on them, right? And the best way that I can
Yeah.
love on the Christian creators is to introduce them to their fans. So we are praying that the Christians who go
I
to
think it's a
regular
great
fan
opportunity.
cons are going to come to Realm Makers Expo and meet Larry the Cucumber, and meet new board games and card games and video games and animated series that they weren't aware of before, that are totally awesome and not derivative, not lame versions of the secular thing. It's like, well, superheroes are popular. Let's make our own superhero. Oh, well, it's got to be
Right.
Christian.
Yeah.
So the only way it's going to be understood is if we call them Bible Man. If it has the word Bible in it, it's going to work, right? And
Right.
yeah. So there might be something somewhere for somebody, but anyone who's a fan of popular culture is going to like, thanks, I'm just going to go watch what I already like, But in the meantime, there are Christians in those industries feeling isolated.
Right.
So that's kind of my
I was
ministry.
gonna say you've got 500,000, or not 500,000, 500, sorry, 500 attendees that are already interested. Hopefully we get to 500,000 someday. That would be
Yeah.
I don't even know if you'd want that. That's that's a wild number.
Yeah, it is a
But
wild
500
number.
people already interested.
Yeah.
500 people with similar stories to the ones you're talking about already. Did you ever think that Realm Makers would become so big? That you'd have 500 people coming every year. When you started this, was it just kind of a hopefully we get a few people and this is like we'll do it for the creators, or was it did you expect that you would have such a response?
Well, once upon a time, early on, the question was asked, how many Christians do you guys think write in these genres? And this was after the first conference, and there was about 65 people who came to that first conference. And I figure if 65 people show up, like what percentage of any community would actually fly to St. Louis and show up, right? I think you can extrapolate it, more than, what, maybe 6% of a community would show up like that. Before that, it was like, I don't know, are there 50 Christians writing fantasy and science fiction? I don't know. There's 25
Hmm.
of us on this, on this board, pro boards, talking and stuff. And again, at that point, I was just listening. I was just a fly on the wall at the beginning, a spouse on the wall, so to speak. And nobody knew how many people were coming. And every year we kept growing. And we went from 65 to 85 to 125 to 165 to 215 to 285 to 365. It just kept going up. And last year was the first year we topped over 500. It's like 505 at the
Hmm.
dinner. And we could only fit 500 by the book in the ballroom for the dinner. But they crammed another table in there. And that's what drove us into our new larger event venue, convention center
Hmm.
in Grand Rapids. And we've already got like 450 authors registered for
Wow.
the conference, not including the faculty. Plus, we've got 125 exhibitors where everybody gets 2 badges. And the game developers, I'm assuming they're going to have around 100 people or so, give or take. And so we're over like 700 just in the people who are
Yeah.
there already, not to mention the fans coming in, right? And if our AI driven ads and our radio spots and press releases do the trick, my plan was 2,000 fans, but God keeps doubling things. So I'm like, okay. I'll think 2,000, but I'll plan for 4,000 because
Right.
that's what God's about. um,
Yeah, I want to like clarify for the listeners that this is not like a small con happening at a church
right.
that's being created. This is a very large pop culture convention, kind of like what do they call the fan expos
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that are happening all over the country. It's a Christian fan expo. Hundreds of people is not a small conference by any means. I'm really excited about the scope of what you and Realm Makers are doing. I think this is going to be really cool.
Well, it's a whole lot easier and it's safer. It's less risky to do something like this in a church, right? At your church. You go to your church and say, "Can we do this
Hmm.
thing?" They say, "Sure." And you go ahead and you do it. You don't have any of the risk that we're taking on. We've got 55,000 square foot ballroom and we're spending, a lot of money on bringing people into it. And we're just praying that a lot of people spend a little money to come see it, right? And
Hmm.
if that all works as designed, we're going to do more Realm Makers Expos all over the country, untethered from the annual Writers Conference.
Yeah, it's very
So,
cool. You mentioned AI a couple times, so I have to
yes,
ask,
yes.
just because of the climate that we are in these days. We're talking about this before the interview, but I actually watched a clip from they're calling it a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use quotations there because
Right.
it felt like a bunch of stock footage kind of taped together.
Yep.
But it was called The Heist.
Okay.
And we were like, that was boring. I thought that was dumb. That's not going to impact us in the future at all. And I was like, well, last year they couldn't get thumbs right or fingers right on AI images. And now we've got chase scenes in cars that are moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you seeing this discussed within the Realm Makers community? Is it viewed as a tool, a threat, or something else?
Yes. It's viewed as a tool. It's viewed as a threat. It's viewed as something else. I mentioned NRB once. At this most recent NRB, they had all over the big, projected on the walls like the AI Bible, right? And it looked like a combination of Lord of the Rings with it looked so much like the Lord of the Rings with like flaming eyes and there's Sauron. But then, like, wait a minute, there's a 5-headed dragon. I'm like, oh, this is Revelation. But it's just AI Bible, totally AI animated. And there's another studio that I've heard of that's a Christian studio that's making straight up AI film. And
Hmm.
it's interesting to see what it's like. But in our community, it has to do with, well, 3 days ago, somebody posted in our community, "Hey, I'm almost done with my AI book. Yeah, I've written 8 AI books in the last, I don't know how many, weeks or whatever." And
Okay.
in our community, that doesn't go over very well, right? There's a
Yeah, I would imagine
Yeah,
that.
there's a recent kerfuffle in the author community.
Mhm.
I don't remember the author's name. I would mention it if I remembered, but they got in a whole bunch of trouble because right in the middle of their book was, without editing it out, readers could read their prompt for the AI to mimic this other famous
Oh,
author's style, right?
huh.
And
Wow.
yeah, like what does that say about your opinion of your own fans or your relationship with your own fans? You know, how can you maintain a relationship when you're not even there? People might remember that clip from Iron Man, right? Where Spider-Man is talking to Iron Man, who's kind of there in his suit, and Spider-Man is like, "You're not even here. It's not even you
Yeah.
talking to me right now." But then he actually steps out, and
Right.
Tony Stark is there. But there was a previous experience where Tony's talking to him, but he's not even there. Is this even you? And in that post I was mentioning in our community, somebody like was like, "Is this even a real person? Is this like an AI bot just coming to like rile us up?" Right? Like, are there literally just
Mhm.
AI bots coming in to talk about using AI just, you know? And now I knew this person, so I knew it was a real person. But
It's
it's
wild that that could even be a possibility.
I know, isn't it? I mean, I'm old enough to like, this is just our first year, actually. Like, all of a sudden, like, what happened? We got 2 robots in the house. We're using AI. We got a robot cat litter box thing and our first Roomba, right? But we got 2 robots in the house. AI is running our ad. Once upon a time, everything was about click testing, kind of figuring out which ads are working the best. But now AI will do that for you. Well, I'm certainly using that for AI. You know, um,
Mhm.
if I could use AI to redo our website, I'd be like, man, that might be a really good use of like, because if you go to our website, there's a lot of information there, and we just kind of keep adding things to it because we keep doing things. But how software gets, if you just keep adding things, eventually
Yeah.
everything just starts breaking, and you got to,
I know there are
start
some
over
coding
again.
options out there
Exactly, exactly.
for their AI.
So,
Yeah,
and I
AI is
totally understand that.
such an interesting thing to me.
Sure, but as a professional, it's like if you become an AI teetotaler, you know, people are the same way about the printing press. Right?
Mhm.
Oh, that's going to be the end of storytelling, you know, oral
Right.
storytelling. It's going to be the end of whatever that they're afraid it's going to be the end of. But ultimately, yeah, like what would we do without printing words on paper now, right? It's
Right.
hardly a threat to anything, right? A lot of these things that come out as threats end up being tamed, right? And as a
Yeah.
professional, you have to be willing to um, take the damage that's done by AI taking over different jobs that somebody might do, but becoming someone that can use that AI professionally in a way that creates new jobs that didn't exist before, right? I have
Mhm.
no idea how that's going to work out. I mentioned earlier, like in my life, my own story, I know I don't see over the horizon. I don't see it, but I know where I'm going, right? Um,
Mhm.
just like the Israelites in the desert. Like they don't see over the horizon, but they see the cloud and they see the pillar of fire, and that's the direction I'm going. Um, if Here's AI, it's just here with us now, but we need to
Mhm.
still follow that pillar of cloud. We need to keep following that pillar of fire in the direction God has us going because God is in control. God is not out of control of AI or
I
anything.
was gonna say, more to your audience, the importance of if you believe that AI is a danger, like for your audience, the answer to that in my mind is to keep writing.
Yes.
Just keep making original content. I think the church has this kind of risk of shying away from new technologies.
Hmm.
And these are all my own ideas. There's a whole panel at the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit about this. But if the church does not keep creating, what'll happen with AI is what it's pulling things from the internet. It's going to pull them from either not great Christian content or from secular content altogether. And so it's so important. Say that you want this AI, someone wants this AI to pull from a sci-fi book or a fantasy book. How much better would it be if it pulls from a Christian sci-fi book than it does from a secular one, and that those ideas that people are getting from AI, because people are using AI whether we want them to or not,
Hmm.
to get those ideas from Christian values rather than secular. Um,
And
and so,
AIs themselves have their own worldview.
yeah,
You know,
100%.
I know a video game developer who says that his AI is Christian. Like he's got his own like onboard AI, and he can. Yeah, I mean it's amazing. When I was talking with him, I'm like, so listening to you, what I'm seeing is a world of like. There's a point where things get easier for indie artists. Now with AI, animation is something that an indie artist can do more feasibly without taking 3 years to put together a film or to take a video game. How many millions and millions of dollars does it take to create a video game? Um, but if an author wants a video game for their story world, what author's got $15 million to put into a video game? But with AI, some of those things become more attainable.
Yeah,
And
yeah, for sure.
looking for the opportunity that it presents without ignoring the danger it presents at the same time. I mean, isn't that absolutely everything we deal with every day? Your car is something that has the potential for getting you to work and doing all these positive things, and it has the opportunity to kill others or yourself, right? You have to balance the potential danger and things you need to avoid when you're operating it from the way that you can use it for your purposes.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
we'll see where it goes.
I want to change topics gears a little bit
All
here.
right.
We're starting to get to our end time here. Um,
Well, they've been saying that
for
for
aspiring
decades
writers.
and decades, haven't they? We're getting to the end times here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. For aspiring writers, whether they are a person who goes to church that loves dragons, or there's someone at the sci-fi club who has a hard time talking about Jesus.
Right.
What's the one piece of advice you would give that aspiring writer today?
Don't publish your first book.
Okay.
Don't publish it. You are going to read your work 6 months later and you would be appalled at your own writing. Don't publish it. Write it, finish it, and put it in a drawer and write another book. And put that one in a drawer and then write another book, right? Don't think because you've had an idea for a story since you were in high school that you need to spend 10 years writing that story, right? You can write that story, you can stop, you can write another story, keep writing something new, but then read the best work. Read something excellent, write something new, and write what you've been writing on. And don't just dwell in the one thing that you're kind of stuck in, right? But when you're done with that first thing, that was class. That was education, right? That was a learning experience.
That's really good advice.
And it's most likely failure in your hand when you're done with it, right? Don't publish that. Put it in a drawer.
Write the next one.
Yes.
That's really
good.
good.
That would be my first advice. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, we will finish the podcast up there. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Cody. Thank you. And I hope everybody here who's within the vicinity of Grand Rapids, Michigan, or beyond, if you want to come check out Realm Makers Expo, July 18th to the 20th in Grand Rapids, Michigan at DeVos Place. It's going to be fantastic. Check out the website. You can go to expo.realmmakers.com. If you want to know more about Realm Makers in general, you can just go to realmmakers.com and navigate to everything. But I'd also encourage you, if you're a fan of Christians in the arts and creative community, we'd invite you to join our community. It used to be all authors, but now we're inviting fans into the Realm sphere. So you can just go to community.realmmakers.com. We've got a free private social network that has subscription levels if you wish to subscribe and get benefits, but you can enter for free, either as a fan or as a creator. We'd love to see you there.
That was perfect. You've done this before.
Well, I guess that's
Awesome.
where my acting comes in.
Yeah. Thank you again so much. We will end the podcast there. Keep gaming, keep praying.
Thank you,
and
Cody.
God bless.
Thank you so much.
And keep writing.